Hey guys, today I want to talk about how I learned English.
English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
It's the information you didn't ask for, but you might find interesting. And damn it, I just want to talk about it. So let me have my time, okay? Don't click away, alright? Good job. So a lot of you guys probably don't know, English is not my first language. I was born in China, stayed in China for the majority of my life. Like I vividly remember not being able to speak or understand English. I don't know, like I kind of want to address some misconceptions that people have about me. Like first of all, people think that I'm a genius.
Check out the big brain on Brad.
Although it's like a really nice compliment, I'm not. Okay? I'm just not. Like I vividly remember feeling like an idiot at school. Also, I just spend a lot of time on it. So calling me a genius when I know I have put in like my heart, my sweat and tears into it is like another insult to me. So yeah, I'm not a genius. And second of all, I'm not an extrovert. Like a lot of people think that, oh, Ella can speak and other people, they can only do school. Like they get good grades at school in language classes. They somehow can't speak. It must mean that someone like Ella was going out there every day to talk to native speakers every day. When in reality, your girl is a shy person. I remember going to college in Seattle back in 2012. I could understand like everybody. I can understand the majority of what the professor is talking about. The stuff that I don't understand is probably the stuff that my classmates don't understand either. So it's not really like a sign of my fluency or lack thereof. It's more like I needed to read the goddamn textbook. But yeah, basically when I got to Seattle or set my foot in America for the very first time back in 2012, I had already kind of been fluent, mostly in terms of like understanding. I could just talk, but it wasn't as like funny or clever. Like because I didn't know what to talk about. Like it wasn't like I wasn't confident or like not confident. It wasn't about that. Like, we grew up differently, you know, had different interests. But luckily back home, before I ever came here, I was kind of already like watching American television, watching Hollywood movies. It's like there's a song by a German like heavy metal band that's called We All Live in America or something like that.
We all living in America.
So basically, it doesn't matter where you're from, like Hollywood is so infiltrated, it's like so saturated that practically wherever you're from, you're bound to have seen something from America, you know? Like McDonald's, Walmart. Yeah, everything is from America, you know? Movies, Avengers. I mean, I don't hate, but like, I'm sick of the Avengers series, okay? Like, yes, you can make movies, you can make money, but like, come on, chill. There's been 5 already, like 5 movies of the same topics, same movies coming out every year. Like, I don't know why I'm getting so riled up, but you get the point. Like, America is like so shoved down my throat sometimes. Like, this is said in a loving way. Not that I'm complaining about it, but yeah, it's just like, it's everywhere, you know? That's why it's so easy. Like, it's relatively easy to learn English than, I don't know, Swedish. English is so readily available. That being said, I did not learn English at school. In fact, I think school was holding me back. I learned it by like immersion. Not immersion in terms of like living with a native speaker, because let's face it, like if I didn't know any words, and if I already had Chinese, like a lot of Chinese words inside me, it's gonna be hard. Like unless you're like basically a toddler and you don't really speak your first language, that could kind of work, you know? But you also have to spend a lot of money and you wouldn't be close to your family. So I don't think it's practical. Like even if you're like just loaded, I don't think it's practical. But my approach was that like I basically just read and consume what native speakers were consuming at the time. And it was hard as a non-native speaker because you have to dumb yourself down. Oh, it's getting hot in here. All right. Well, I was 16 when I started, okay? I couldn't go into it with like whatever 16-year-olds were reading. I have to dumb it down to like what 10-year-olds were reading. And also, I couldn't just read anything, you know? I had to prioritize. Not every word is equal. Not every word is as frequently seen, as common. I basically had a list of words that I needed to prioritize, and I didn't memorize any of them. Because like, first of all, it doesn't work. Like, your memory doesn't work for this kind of stuff. It's like knowing how to use a word is more like a muscle memory. And also, I just don't want to do that, you know? It's a waste of time. And like, I could very well be reading within the similar topics, within a similar range of vocabulary, and I just make myself keep running into those words. And then eventually, when I do like kind of get a hang of it, I will remember all these words related to each other. I will remember all the words mentioned in an article, like within the context. I feel like context is so important. Like, you can't just remember one word on its own, isolated. Reading and consuming content and absorbing everything in was helpful because I don't have to force myself to do anything. And then when I came here, or when I came in contact with the native speaker, I immediately kind of know what I can talk about. I mean, granted, in the beginning, there wasn't much. You're just watching TV. You're just kind of like chit-chatting, talking about the weather. In fact, I didn't even initiate a lot of the conversations, but I have the inventory in me, okay? Potentially, I could talk about things like life, the purpose of life, and goals. When I was reading or learning English, I read a lot of these self-help books, which coincidentally were a much easier read than fiction. And plus, I was learning something about life. And so, in the beginning, it was more about language learning and trying to see if I was getting any better. But throughout the years, it transitioned from learning a second language to I just find it interesting. I just love learning this information, this piece of information in this language. And you know what? A funny thing happened. Like, okay, this is gonna sound cocky or whatever, but I don't care. It's been true for me. I'm just speaking from my heart. I noticed that I was getting better at my second language than my first language. Like, my Chinese isn't bad. I had about 16 years of Chinese in me, but even within those 16 years, I wasn't reading proactively in Chinese, you know? And I always had an aversion for reading while I was in China, while I was in school, while I only had one language, because it just wasn't a thing, you know? And I didn't have time to read. But when I started learning English, oh my God, it's like I rediscovered the joy of reading and rediscovered the joy of like language and fixating on which word to use and why this author used this word instead of that word. And I started getting really like meticulous and mindful of my word choices. It's like, okay, I talked to a friend about this actually, or I shared it on Facebook. It's almost like me being a blind person, and immediately all of my other senses started getting more like accentuated or more augmented, you know? And that's kind of how I felt, because I couldn't take any word just for granted, because I had to look up basically every word in a dictionary. Otherwise, I wouldn't understand any of it. So because the process was a lot slower and it was more mechanical, I've come to really appreciate the language. And to do that, I have to write, I have to copy notes down in my notebook. I have a collection of notebooks of just the words that I learned, the phrases that I found really inspiring and interesting. So I'm very mindful about that. And ironically, that's what's gotten me better at expressing myself in English rather than Chinese. It's so the opposite of what a lot of people are doing at the time. Like, a lot of language learners will they'll just want to talk to a native speaker right away, which I get it. Like, it's sexy, it's appealing. Like, I mean, yeah, that's the whole point of learning a language, you know? It's not to like do tests. It's not to like talk to your friends who's also a non-native speaker. But you gotta realize, like, okay, talk is important, but talk about what? You know, you don't have any inventory, and so there's almost no point for me to like prematurely approach a native speaker. And so for the longest time in my life, I didn't practice my spoken English, although I did spend a lot of time like working on my pronunciation, mostly in the form of like singing, which coincidentally I love. Like it's just fun, you know. And plus, when you're singing, you get to see the lyrics, you get to see what's the most popular slang and what's hip and cool. And when you're singing, you're kind of repeating to yourself this mantra in your head, and so like you're basically talking to yourself every single day. Like it's unnatural to talk to yourself, but it's completely acceptable and natural to sing to yourself. So where was I going with this? Like my accent is acceptable, it's convincing, but more than that, I think it's like the words I know and the things I know, and that's done through reading and consuming information. Content, not memorizing words, not prematurely approaching a native speaker, reading a lot, building my inventory of words, building my inventory of expressions, watching TV, singing, working on my pronunciation. And also there's another factor. I spend a lot of time like perfecting my grammar, not in terms of like doing tests and, you know, being good at tests. Although in my defense, if you're really good at something, tests shouldn't be a problem. Like you get naturally good at it. Like you don't have to spend any more time doing it. Grammar for me applies to so many other aspects of the language, because when you're listening to a hard material, like if you're listening to a TED Talk, the speaker usually use like complicated, convoluted statements, therefore complicated grammar, and so you just can't escape it. Like sometimes native speakers will give me a hard time for like emphasizing grammar. To me, it's like once you get it, you get it. Like once you memorize, or not memorize, but once you can like infuse grammar rules into everything about this language, you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's not like, okay, I always look at it kind of like driving a car. Like once you memorize how to, I don't know, shift the gear, look at the mirror, you don't think about it consciously, you know? But you do have to, like, at least in the beginning, it feels awkward. You do have to kind of work through that and make it not so effortful anymore. So it kind of goes from like very intentional trying to memorize everything to, okay, I just get it, I just do it, you know? You don't think about it. But if you don't memorize those rules, every time you go into a car, it's gonna be so scary for you because you don't know any of these rules. That's kind of how I feel about like people not really pay attention to grammar. They think it's a relief, but it's not. I don't know why I'm getting so riled up. It's just, okay, I make this kind of content online, okay? I do this for a living. I dispel misconceptions. I debunk myths and just like crazy bullshit theories online. And I always hold this belief, or like I thrive on this belief that if anyone so average like me can do this, then anyone can. Like you could be as fluent as you want. You could be as fluent in as many languages as you want. I try to do it in French. Like I was getting good at it, but in theory, I could apply the same strategies onto any language, be it French or Japanese or Korean. But I just didn't have the time, or it's just not my priority. But if I wanted to learn a second or like a third language, I could do that. And so to wrap it up, I guess my point of this video is that, yeah, I'm not a genius. Although I would say I'm a full-on geek when it comes to this kind of stuff. I like totally geek out and over-engineer everything, and it just frustrates me when people think that like they have to live with the native speaker, where come to America, we're any English-speaking country really young and like spend a ton of money living abroad. We're living with a native speaker. You could do this thanks to the glory of the technology these days, one of which is the internet. Like, I learned so many words and phrases and like cultural references just by watching TV, and then later on YouTube. Like, I learned so many things on YouTube. It's like no joke, you know? One of the biggest takeaway from college, for me at least, is that I could pretty much look up anything on Google and YouTube. Like, that's the only thing I remember vividly about college. Although it wasn't directly thanks to college, it was the people in college that told me that. Learning a second language has definitely made me a lot meticulous, a lot more sharp, a lot more geeky, and I try to look at things as is, not in terms of like passing a level or getting a certificate or getting just, you know, a paper that says, oh, you're really good at this, you know? I try to just either be good at it or just don't bother with it. And yeah, I think that's why I am the way I am. I don't know what this video is about.
那这边就想跟大家介绍一下我的所有的这个产品了。第一个就是我的网课了，现在我有这个 PC 端或者电脑端的网课，所以阅览起来特别方便啊。然后大家可以用微信登录，像我这样子登录进去，手机端还是可以用。接下来是我的这个电子书，我知道因为实体的这个版本在中国的伙伴呢，短时间之内好像没有办法寄到，所以大家可以看这个电子版。在美国的朋友可以买这个实体书啊，可以买实体书，所有的链接都会在视频底下给公布，所以大家要找我的东西的话就特别方便了。